Hello, I'm Soycat and welcome back to the second channel video. Today I wanted to talk about something which sounds like a really big and all-encompassing subject, and truth be told, it kind of is both of those things, but it's been on my mind a lot recently, and I really want to talk about which country in the world is best located. What is the best location if you were to start a country over an existing one? Which would be the best country to pick? And although I wanted to talk about the overarching subject a little bit later in this video, I wanted to start and kind of focus most of the video on which country is best located to get you to visit it accidentally. Because one of the big and growing benefits of a geographic position of a country is how you can get people to visit it because it's either close, like, oh, if you live in the United States, you probably visit Canada because it's right there, for instance. And also in terms of the fact that, like, taking connecting flights via a country is a thing which happens an increasing amount of the time. If you want to fly from the United States to Russia, you can fly via London in the UK. You can fly via Paris in France. You can fly via Egypt if you want to. You can fly via a whole host of countries. And because of that, getting people to visit on the way to something is actually a big boost for a country. It seems kind of pointless, right? Like, oh, they're in the country for 6 hours, but during those 6 hours, they do technically contribute. They contribute to the airline, and in a lot of cases, they'll stay for a bit longer just to see what's up, or they'll come back, or they'll decide to do business there in future. There are a lot of benefits of having people go into your country accidentally, and let me talk about which country in particular benefits the most from this, because there is an objective answer as to which country is best placed in terms of international flights, and it might just surprise you because it surprised me. So first of all, let's start by analyzing this big old map right here. I found this map just enormously fascinating because every single red dot on this map is a international airline, a huge international airport, I should say, and every single green line is a route between two airports that is operated by some airline. And therefore you can see there's a lot of green lines. Some of them are all by themselves, and some of them are in huge splotches like this, or like this, for instance, where you can't even see Europe's back there. Like, is there really a Europe back there? You can see there's a bunch of green splotches around the world, and looking at this map tells us a bunch of things right off the bat. Some interesting that you might already know, some of which you don't. So first of all, let's mention the fact that most transcontinental stuff seems to go via, as you can see, via Europe right there. But also the biggest continents in terms of air travel are America. As you can see, a huge amount in North America, at least. There's a huge amount in Europe, maybe the biggest amount on the entire map because it's just a non-stop blob. And then there's a lot in East Asia as well. Asia as a whole does have a lot of it, but because it's such a big continent, it seems to be spread out. Like, all of the edges have a lot. And you can see there's a lot of dead spots on the map. Australia, there's 4 or 5 big cities where there's flights coming out of. The rest is kind of a desolate, like, no one lives there. There's no huge airports, or some people live there, but very, 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 very few people live there. So there's just kind of nothing in the middle of Australia. You can see that via their air routes. You can see that south of Christchurch in New Zealand, there's basically no international airports that have major flights going in and out. You can see how Africa, despite having like the second highest number of people on a continent in the world, like, if you list the continents, Asia has like 60% of humans, and the rest have a very small slice, but Africa doesn't have its fair share of flights, and that's because of the low economic development per person. How many people are really flying, how many people have the money to fly in Africa? How many people have the need to fly, the economic necessity? There is a big hub here in Ethiopia, but you can see how it's not as common a thing as it is in, say, North America, or it is in, say, Asia, and because of that, you can see there's not so many routes going to Africa. And then also, if you look over at South America, there is a similar thing going on where, like, it's not quite as bad as Africa, but there is a significant decrease when compared to America, Europe, or compared to Asia. So therefore, the key thing we've kind of learned from this is that we're mostly focusing when it comes to, like, getting people, large numbers of planes and people on said planes, because there's a pretty standard amount on an international flight, right? Like, you can go a lot bigger, but not too much bigger. So if you want to get the most planes, the most people, the most economic value, whatever you want to say on a flight, you are mostly focusing on North America, you're focusing on Europe, and you're focusing on Asia. You want to get people to go from one continent to another, because you can't really help with a domestic flight. Like, even if you live in, Chad, you can't have people that want to fly from Italy to another part of Italy, fly via Chad. It's just not a thing they're going to do. You can't have people that want to fly from Italy to London, fly via Chad, but maybe if they want to fly from Italy to Cuba, they might be willing to fly via Chad. So Chad does have a small advantage, a potential advantage in that situation, if it was on the way, which it isn't. But yeah, so since we're mostly talking about intracontinental between Europe Asia and America, that's where all of the stopover value is. That's where all the accidental kind of passengers come in. And based on those three constants, you can see how, Europe's got the biggest one. And this makes sense because when you think about it, if you have three major continents that people want to fly between, if you want to fly between Europe and Asia, or you want to fly between Europe and America, you'll do so direct. It's about 7 hours that way, or it's about 8 to like 15 hours that way. But, you can see how like you'll fly directly there because it's a lot faster than going via America. You won't fly from Europe to America via Asia. You won't fly from Europe to Asia via America. It's just not a thing that you'll really ever do. Therefore, Europe wins on those flights, but also from America to Asia. So, for instance, if you want to fly from, I know this is technically Europe still, but if you want to fly from either the US to Asia and Russia, you'll still fly it via Europe, or at least in the European direction, which is interesting. Not something you necessarily figure. If you want to fly to a lot of Asia, even India, you'll fly near Europe, and because of that, that means that a lot of Asian to American traffic does still go via Europe. So all Europe traffic starts or ends in Europe, and all Asian to American traffic either goes direct or goes through Europe. Therefore, the biggest, the best continent, the best located continent is going to be Europe for intercontinental travel. There are some benefits to the US's position in theory later down the line, but right now the US mostly, has the world's largest airlines, but they mostly do, domestic routes. Their international, intercontinental routes are not a large part of their offering. So yeah, Europe is the best located continent for these stopover things. If you're flying from anywhere to Europe, we're kind of in the center of the world in terms of, because again, if everyone was evenly located in the world, then the best country would be the one which is just in the center somewhere near the equator. The Central African Republic might be the best located country in terms of flights, but because the economic value of the population is centered in a really weird way around Europe, Europe therefore wins, and Europe is in the middle of most flights and might be able to offer you a stopover, and because of that, most of the world's largest airlines by international destinations do exist in Europe. Some of the biggest in order, or let's not do orders, in fact. Let's just do like nice countries here. We've got British Airways from London, you've got Air France from Paris, and you've obviously got Lufthansa, which are mostly from Frankfurt, but also have Munich and Berlin operations. But let's just say Lufthansa from Frankfurt. So 3 large cities in Europe get the majority of the traffic, because if Europe as a whole, if there was like an EU-wide airline, besides Ryanair or something like that, if there was like an EU airline, like a flag carrier, then yeah, Europe would just be the best country. But because Europe is a lot of different countries with a lot of different individual things going on, there are lots of different individual best airlines in Europe. So when it comes to flights to the Far East, the best located country is Finland, because if you want to fly from anywhere in Europe to the Far East, that is, in that example, we're talking about Tokyo mostly, or Japan, or Korea, or Pyongyang. You want to fly to Pyongyang, as we all do from time to time. The best place to do so would be via Finland. I know they don't do direct flights. Don't get on me about that. But yeah, theoretically, if Pyongyang becomes a hot tourist spot after the regime falls, best way to do would always be via Finland. They've got the Great Circle route on their side, same for particularly northern Japan, because they can fly to the north side of things. And it means that if you're taking a stop, if you are taking a stop anyway, Finland is the best place to do so, and they're the best located place for the Far East. If you want to fly to America, usually the best place to do so is going to be either the UK, with London. A lot of transcontinental traffic starts in London and goes to New York. This is one of the busiest international stretches in the world, so London gets huge advantage there. Also, another great located country is Iceland, because it is kind of midway between Europe and America, on some routes at least. Because if you wanted to fly from London to, say, LAX, you can see how, like, oh yeah, it's not that further out. You can see that, right? So Iceland has a big advantage, but it mostly goes to London. And the best located country in terms of South American flights goes to Spain and Madrid. Iberia has a lot of South American flights because they are kind of ideally located there. And then Germany has its huge advantage in terms of being just in the center. Once you fly into Europe, you'll have a very short connecting flight afterwards, because most flights from Germany to other major cities are like 1 to barely any hours. So yeah, Germany has a big advantage in terms of that. The UK has a big advantage in terms of going to other countries. In terms of going to North American countries. And Air France has the big advantage of the, I guess it's, it's there. I mean, they've got strikes. Everyone loves the French strikes. It's, you've got to see when you're in France. But no, more seriously, you can see why Air France is on the decline because of that, and because not necessarily having the same geographic advantage. It's similar to London. It's very, very close, so like a lot of the same things apply, but it's not quite on the same level. It's just not quite there, as you can see, when you compare the exact same distances. So just keep that in mind, that it is a small part of the whole thing. But when I say 1, 2, 3, like, oh yeah, so Lufthansa is the biggest, and then there's like Air France and British Airways in a close kind of second. So what about the real biggest? Because I didn't say they were the biggest overall. I said they were some of the biggest. And surprisingly enough, like if you look at all the European countries and you try to work out, so which country would have the biggest one? Is it SAS in Sweden, or well, technically it's Scandinavia? Is it going to be like Finland? Is it going to be Poland? Is it Belarus? You know, which country is the best located? It's surprisingly enough Turkey. Turkey is the best located country in the world, and just by physical geography, that makes sense already, because it's at the crossroads between Europe and Asia. It makes a lot of sense that this would, in fact, be a great, it's a great location just by land area. But when you think about it in terms of air, by countries nearby that you can fly in straight line routes to, because when you fly from Istanbul to Moscow, you fly like this. You just go directly there. No land routes are necessary. Turkey is in an amazing position by the number of countries it's close to, by the number of countries it's directly in between. Because if you look at Turkey, they have a Black Sea, they have the Mediterranean Sea, small seas, not oceans nearby them. Because they just have seas nearby them, in every single direction, they have a bunch of countries and a bunch of airports and a bunch of people. So, for instance, Middle East to the south, all of the Middle East is south of them. If you look at the north, all of Europe is in the same rough direction of them. All of Africa and there's in the same rough direction. All of Asia is in the same rough direction. All of these places can connect to any other one of these places. To some extent, there's like going Southeast Asia, and to some extent a little bit of America can go to any other place connecting via Turkey, and it makes a lot of sense. There are only very specific routes that don't make sense that way, and because of that, Turkish Airlines actually has the largest number of international destinations, and because of that, the best located country in the world, if you wipe everything else clear, is actually Turkey, or the best located city is Istanbul, I rather should say. But that is something that surprised me personally, because it's not something you hear being a large part of the, Turkey strategy. They have a lot of tourism, they like people coming to their country, but it's not necessarily something you would have realized is done via Turkish Airlines. Because the United Arab Emirates, Dubai, it's one of the key parts of its fame, one of the key reasons people go there, is because Emirates is known as like a luxurious airline, which honestly, it's debatable because it's only really for first-class passengers and maybe business. And, same thing with Qatar. Famous business class, so that you want to go there. And Singapore Airlines is a similar thing. These have famous, luxurious products that you might want to visit for. But with Turkey, it comes down to geography, and they do have that same kind of thing. But it's just not as widely known about as, the Emirates strategy, as anything like that. But the best located country is Turkey, with close seconds and thirds being somewhere in Europe or somewhere in the Middle East, just because of their pure geographic locations, means they can do fast connections. Doing a faster connections not only makes them more it makes them, look better in terms of like people like having shorter flights, but also it means they can spend less, and it also means that if they have luxury combined with being the fastest, people want to fly with them. So yeah, that is why a lot of people pick these airlines, the flag carriers like Turkish Airlines do so well, and that is one of the key parts of all of these cities that maybe you didn't think about. So yeah, what's the best located city in the world right now in terms of just getting people to go to a country by accident, let's just say, or, because it's close to you? It's actually Turkey, somewhere in the Middle East, or Europe, depending on how exactly you want to go on that. But again, Turkish does come out ahead. But let's talk about the future of this, because one of the things that will change is that right now, being in Australia, like Qantas, they're a pretty big airline, and New Zealand, pretty big airline, but they can't do many places because they're all the way in the corner of the world, really. They've got a lot of ocean around them. It's something you don't realize until you start to think about how many countries are within, 10,000, kilometers off them or something. But yeah, because the distance between them and other countries is pretty prohibitive, there aren't many countries around, like Australia and New Zealand. They have to stick together because they're not surrounded by much else. And right now, they're bad locations for an airline, but in theory, in future, with stuff like the Perth to London route, which just started by Qantas, there are a lot more people that choose because of the fact that there's a direct flight now. It takes like 2 or 3 hours less than connecting, but because people see it's direct, a lot more people are flying there. There is a triple-fold increase on Perth to London traffic just because of the introduction of routes like this. And it's something interesting I wanted to get out before the end here, that because every single year planes are or like every single decade, let's say, planes are getting marginally faster or cheaper, or both, therefore there are more routes starting because more and more people can also afford it. There are going to be more and more vague routes that connect like this, and I guess the world is really getting smaller. People say that, and I'm like, you're like, oh, the world's getting so much smaller. It's like, no, it's not. World's actually exactly the same size as it was 50, 50 years ago. Same size as it was actually 500,000 years ago. But the world actually is getting smaller in terms of like, you'll be able to visit anywhere in less than a day at some point soon, because all of these thinner trunk routes are opening up. All of these like new experimental things are happening because of new plane developments, because of just airlines trying stuff and becoming more and more profitable over time. And it's interesting because it means that you'll be able to visit more places, more people will be able to visit your place. And there's there's things that happen from that. A lot of good things, maybe some bad things in your opinion, but it's something worth thinking about, that in your worldview, you can't, things are getting closer to you. And I don't know how I don't know how to reconcile that necessarily, but it is something that I realize every now and then. I'm like, that's going to change things. You can work out how it does in your own mind. But let me talk about now, at the end of this video, we've spoken about best located country for flights. We've spoken about how that's going to change, Eventually, anywhere will be just as good. The highest population will matter the most, which might give China the advantage. Because if it takes an hour to fly anywhere in the world, China will, the population center will win. The economic value center will win. America will be second, of course. But yeah, so obviously with that in mind, that's how things will change in the future when things get crazy fast. But let's now talk about the best located country on Earth. If you could just pick a country, take over its territory, replace it with your own, let's say 100 million people country, which country would be the best spawn point? If you could just plop down and let's say replace Iceland with Toykatland, or replace Turkmenistan with Toykatistan, if you could just go down there, replace their country with your country, which country would be the best spawn point? That's it's like a fun thing that I think about a lot. And I think, although I'm not going to have the biggest or brightest observations, it is something I wanted to say because maybe you've never considered this. But I think the obvious answer would be Russia, right? Because it's the largest country on Earth, and therefore you get the most land. But I don't think the actual answer would be Russia. They have a lot of land, but they have weaknesses in it. Like they've got some natural weaknesses, and they do have a lot of resources, but a lot of their land isn't even usable. So the long game would be Russia. I think China's an okay choice, but they also have the same. Lots of borders, lots of complicated, things going on each of them. So China's being the second biggest country, not so great. But I think the third biggest country, the United States, is definitely the one you pick. And again, I think a lot of people, because it is such a long game kind of thing, a lot of people don't realize that the United States isn't just successful because of insert value here. There's a lot of things that they do successfully in terms of insert value here, but one of the things that makes the US so wildly successful is it is basically a continent-sized country. Most of North America, I know Canada's up there, but most of North America's habitable, farmable, livable, profitable, valuable, I'm using lots of able words to hopefully prove my point here, land, exists in the United States. And because the United States is the whole continent size, there's two places you can be attacked from via land, because on both other sides there's just huge area, they're protected by oceans on both sides, but then they also have navigable rivers, via the whole continent, so trade's a lot easier. Even today, these rivers are still a key part of getting stuff around. They've got a somewhat existent railroad network. They can use flights to connect in the country. It's a very well connected, very easy, very well set up country, and because it has two separate coasts, that's another key advantage. And because its neighbors are Canada and Mexico, even if you're just an average sized country today, you're going to be bigger than both those countries. You're going to be the threat. If someone wanted to take down your hypothetical 100 million people, the Toycat states, let's call them, if someone was to take down the 100 people in the Toycat states, the 100 million people, sorry, you'd have to get Mexico, all of the Caribbean and Central American states together, and even then, you're probably still not going to be able to do it. So yeah, the US is just so perfectly protected from a lot of different things. They have so many resources. The oil amounts in America is actually pretty insane when you look into it. They've got all these different things going for them, just in terms of the pure land there, that you would have to pick the US. I think you might pick Russia in the long term because they have the Arctic, but in terms of right now, US is definitely the best spawn point. Not only because, by the way, I'm just thinking about this right here, the continental 48 or whatever. There's also Alaska, there's also Hawaii, there's Guam all the way over here somewhere that you always lose, or I always lose. America owns so much territory. There's Puerto Rico all the way over there. There's a few random islands in the middle of nowhere, the atolls and stuff. Basically, the US owns a lot. The US owns a lot of valuable stuff, and because of that, they kind of can project power globally, which is one of the reasons they are so successful to this day. And I think it should be taught, maybe in America, maybe outside of America, that is one of the key things behind their success. America is the most successful country around right now, and some high percentage of that, you can work it out yourself, is because European settlers went and found a great place, and they turned it into a country, slowly expanded that into a continent, and now that continent is what they call home. So yeah, that's a thing that you should keep in mind about the US, and the best located country, definitely the US, in terms of like just having the most land that you could eventually turn into something. Russia, but Russia's always been behind in terms of per person, because having this type of land is kind of tricky. Best in terms of just like you can cause a lot of conflicts with a lot of neighbors. China, because I mean, who doesn't want to border North Korea, Kyrgyzstan, India, Vietnam, and also Myanmar at the same time? And also Pakistan. What a great set of neighbors, right? And also just along the sea, you've got Taiwan, you've got Hong Kong, you've got the Philippines. You've got a lot of fun going on at your border. So yeah, the fun option is China. The realistic option is America, and the maybe playing the long game option is Russia. If you pick Iceland or something, you're objectively wrong. Sorry, I love you, Iceland, but not a great place to start a country, unless you just mean via flights from Europe to America. But yeah, with that said, I hope you all enjoyed this video. I've had a lot of fun making it. There's a lot of thoughts that have been on my mind. Maybe you do. Let me know if you want to see like a video focusing just on like which country have the best geographic advantages, which ones have the worst, where would be the worst place to start one, because it's something, again, I think it's a really fun idea, and maybe you like the second half of this video more than the first. Maybe you didn't, maybe you did. Let me know in the comments down below, because by the way, I think worst place to start a country, even though Singapore is a great location, 100 million people, probably shouldn't fit them in there. But anyway, with that said, hope you all enjoyed the video. I guess check out the Reddit and leave some comments if you liked it. Really appreciate when you do that. And I guess also check out the link in the description. It's called Flatter. It's the basic system is like, rather than me saying, here's my Patreon, check it out, support me specifically, you support every single person that you choose to, that you watch. You have one subscription for the whole internet. So instead of you subscribing to me, because you should give me this amount per month, I think it's a better system because you can give X amount to X number of creators. I think it's a great thing personally. You can check it out at least. And as a quick little thing here, if you sign up and donate, I think if you just pledge $10 for 3 months, not only will they give all of that money to the creators, there's no fee right now, 0%, but I think I'll get $10 regardless of whether you give it to me or not. So it's a win-win here, I think. Check it out, flash.com/ibxtoycat. Hope you enjoyed the video, and let me know if you want to see this stuff again, and I'll see you all next time. Goodbye.